Andrew, you got a spoiler cast theme song for us this week?
Away, 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 away.
Very nice. Very nice. Man, your singing abilities never fail to astound me every single week.
Wow.
It is the Spoiler Cast podcast here on Siftpop. This is where we go into all the spoilery details of whatever we talked about on the podcast proper, and also where the theme song is different every single week because we don't want to give anything away.
Indeed.
All right, on to some spoiler talk about the OA. Wow, where to start?
The beginning.
Maybe go episode by episode?
Yeah.
I don't know that I could necessarily do that, but I will say I thought this was going to be a story about Prairie, and it ended up being so much more about like two stories. One about, a story she's telling about what happened while she was gone, a story that we are led to be in doubt of. So we are led to question whether it's real or not, and that carries through the entire season if this story she's telling is real. And then a story about a group of kids that come around here to hear her do her storytelling and how their lives intersect and what that, means in the long term there. It completely caught me off guard in that way. I was not expecting it to be a story telling a story. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it's this girl and trying to explain her situation, like you said, in a shadow of doubt. A cloud looms over that story the whole time.
Let me ask, do you guys think that happened or didn't happen?
I don't know, because there's so many things like...
But what do you think? I know the show doesn't tell us.
If there's going to be more seasons, it did happen. If this is a miniseries and it's done, it didn't happen.
I don't think it happened.
So I have so many thoughts, and they all tie in together.
Go ahead.
So, as spoiler-ish spoiler, Prairie, what's her name again? The actress?
I don't know.
Okay.
Britt
something.
Maslin, I think.
She has already confirmed that she knows how season 2 begins and ends. So that means there's going to be a second season.
With her in it, apparently.
So I hope the story is real, but the way they did this show, there's a great way of working both angles. So if this legitimately happened to her, okay, and, that leaves all kinds of things to be resolved in the second season. Like, where are these other 3 individuals, and what has happened to them after he dumped her off, okay? And now what do they do about that? Now do they come together and go save these people?
Let's take this in two parts. This is where I was trying to say there's two stories here. So let's take it in two parts. Let's start with what she says happens.
Okay.
All right, let's start with that part of the story. So she is telling, just imagine she's telling this story to this group of 5 people that she's put together, which we'll talk about in a bit. But she's telling a story of how she grew up in Russia as, some sort of, princess, basically, a wealthy family.
Aristocratic.
She had visions of being trapped in an aquarium, and ended up that a school bus she was on went off into, a cold river, and that was her dream. She was actually trapped with her schoolmates in the bus, and nobody survived, including her. She died on the beach with her father there, but she came back to life. And this is where we start to learn that this is really a story about near-death experiences. So it's about, people coming back and what can you find on the other side. And so she has this experience, and then she goes on with her life. She has to go to America. I forget the specific reasons. She was in danger from somebody there.
So what happened is her father, he was in a group of incredibly wealthy, influential people.
Yes.
And the attempt to kill... They were attempting to kill all their children. That's why the bus went off the bridge.
Well, it's the group of individuals that he was involved with had grown too wealthy and powerful, and they dealt with the Russian mob.
Yeah.
And so the Russian mob, in order to let these people know that they're not untouchable and that they can be kept in check, they killed all the children. And they took their most precious belongings from them as a way to let them know, we can get to you at any time, don't get too big for your britches.
So he sends her to America, where she is in some sort of brothel, I think, to begin with, and that is also adopting out the kids of these prostitutes when they have kids.
It's a baby farm.
Yeah, it's a baby farm, basically. And a couple comes by and ends up being Prairie's parents because they find her there. By the way, she goes blind. She's told that her sight will be taken from her the first time she dies, and that she can go back, but this weird creature that's on the other side takes the sight.
It's a woman on the astral plane telling her what is going to happen to you in your life is too painful for you to see, so you can go back to being alive, but I'm going to take your sight from you.
Yeah, and so now she's this blind girl. So this couple adopts this blind girl, and she constantly wants, it believes that her father is going to come find her. Her father's going to come find her. So eventually she runs away. I'm guessing, I don't know if they ever said, but it was around the age of 16, maybe? 16, 17?
She was 21 when she went to New York.
Was she?
Yeah, it said
wow.
It was her 21st birthday, and she decided to go to New York.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Okay. So she goes to New York. She's looking for her father, but instead she is found by this man who is apparently a scientist who is studying near-death experiences. And he kind of lures her in by telling her kind of what he does, and he shows her this cool machine. Well, it turns out he's not just a scientist studying near-death experience. He is a sociopath who has trapped people in some sort of cave basement.
In the coolest contraption I've ever seen them use for one of these.
The coolest and cruelest.
Yeah, it's sort of like a terrarium for human beings.
Yeah, exactly. Terrarium's the perfect word. And so he has them like, some sort of Trivial Pursuit pieces.
With a natural stream that runs through every single cell.
Which was a very interesting mechanic to the whole thing. I liked that.
So we get to know these other people that have already been trapped here. There's a football player who had a near-death experience and in high school, I think. There's somebody who is verging on homeless or, just kind
drug addict.
Yeah, it's strung
OD'd.
out. That kind of person. He OD'd. That was his near-death experience. And also is suffering from some sort of disease.
Yeah, I think he had AIDS. I think that's what it was.
Okay. I don't think they ever explicitly said.
No, he just said he knew his time was limited.
Right.
He was already dying.
That kind of thing. The other girl there, what was her story?
She was the one who had the perfect pitch. Do you remember whenever?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, she could sing.
Yeah.
Okay, so this was one of my big issues with the show. Did you guys listen to her sing?
It was not perfect pitch.
Not barely listenable. I struggled. I was like, I was so tempted at one point to start hitting the D-pad on my PlayStation to skip through the singing part because it was getting on my nerves.
But that was the end of the episode.
and then it was already over. I was like, oh, but yeah, she was atrocious. But apparently she supposedly had perfect pitch after her near-death experience.
That's just because you've never been to the other side, Sean. If you'd been to the other side, you would have heard the beauty, the absolute beauty in that song.
Now, the guitar player from Brazil or Cuba?
She comes later.
Wow, she can play the guitar.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive.
Whoa.
But that's part of the near-death experience thing in the scientist research is that people come back with some sort of
gift.
Advanced, gift. And
which is where the sci-fi element kind of begins.
And he heard that in Prairie with her violin playing. Now, she is calling herself the OA when she comes back.
Never figure out why.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
Why?
we do.
She's the original angel.
She's the original angel.
They
piece it together. So they give it to you in little bits. Like, we figured out the original part about 4 episodes in.
Mm-hmm.
And then the angel part was, I think, the next episode or the episode after. That we were like, angel. Okay, it's just the original angel. Yep.
So they come to see themselves as angels, as people who can go to the afterlife and come back.
Yeah.
And this scientist is killing them.
And bringing them back.
And so through this, a machination of, gas that is being let in there to, we find out, make them subservient and makes them do everything they're told.
And forget.
And also forget what they've been through. They try to avoid this gas and go through it themselves. So the football player is the one who's chosen because the drug addict won't do it to let Prairie do it. And I'm not sure if all that's making sense if you haven't seen it. But if you've seen it, you understand what we're talking about. And then he goes up there in those scenes where he is trying to pretend that he is under the influence and still drown in that helmet drowning thing.
Yeah.
We're insane.
Yeah,
he's
trying to die without letting on the fact that he knows what's going on.
Yeah.
Which is a trip. And as Prairie is telling the story and describing it, this goes on for years. So this is happening on a several times a week basis.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy, every time,
He's
of course,
studying.
he ends up passing out, the football player.
Yeah.
So, but he's so determined to figure it out that he keeps willingly subjecting himself to this. So hundreds of times he goes up with conscious knowledge that this guy is going to kill him and then bring him back, hoping that he can get a little further in the process, to see exactly what's going on or see more.
I should also mention, I think this is after Prairie has used, she's tried to put this guy to sleep. She's tried to get on his good side, so she's up cooking for him.
She tried to kill him.
She tried to drug him. She tried to kill him. She stabbed him, kicked him down the stairs.
Yeah. And escaped once.
And
that's when she gets her sight back.
Right.
And then he hits her in the head with a axe or whatever.
It was
or
a gun.
Oh, that's right.
Butt
The
of
butt of
the
a
gun.
rifle. And now she gets her sight back. But was anyone else unnerved by the fact that he was not even remotely upset? She kicks him down a flight of stairs, okay, and we thought he was dead. And then as he's repairing her and putting, he's not peeved at all.
Hey, it's okay.
Yeah, he's just like, hey, I understand, And I'm like, this guy is truly unhinged.
Yeah.
Like he has truly lost touch with everything, but he doesn't want to upset her. He doesn't want to,
And here's the craziest part. There's somebody
he's
else
in love with her.
There's somebody else just like him at a morgue somewhere
Oh,
that he
yeah.
goes and talks to.
Oh my God.
It's like that scene.
It's like a little club. And these two guys are competing to find out what's going on with the afterlife.
Right.
It turns out that this is a competition. And then when he lets on that he may know more than the other guy, this other guy pulls a gun out on him and threatens to kill him.
Yeah.
And a fight ensues, and he ends up shooting this dude and stuffing him into a cold fridge at the morgue.
Yeah.
There's so much weirdness going on in this show and inexplicable strangeness.
So one thing we haven't touched on yet that we need to in this story is the fact that when they die, apparently what they think they're being given are what's called movements. And they learn by process of, I wouldn't say elimination, but just, process of logic, that each of them has a different movement that they're being given when they die. And that when they put all these movements together, they believe they'll open a portal to the other side. And so Prairie was given the first movement. The football player was finally able to stay conscious enough to die and remember things, and was given the second movement. And at that point, because he knows what's going on, he's letting them stay conscious so that he can learn the other movements.
Right.
But
the evil doctor dude.
So they've got two movements. And
they need the guitar player for the third.
Yeah.
The fourth.
The fourth.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
Because the guy the drug addict dies, and they use their movements to bring him back to life.
And I thought that's when the show was going to go totally crazy, and then it kind of let me down after that.
You wanted it to go a little more crazy?
No, I thought okay, so this is the kind of show it's going to be, and then it just switched it up again, and I didn't like it.
So are we waiting to talk about the things we didn't like?
No, you can anytime you want to. I'm just
So-
going through the plot, and anytime there's something you want to talk about, go for it.
Once we start with this movements thing is the point where this was the one element of the show that drove me crazy through the entire thing.
I loved it.
It was so stupid and
I thought it was
weird.
dumb.
The body movement
I
stuff was
loved
so ridiculously off the wall, new wave dance funkiness. And the fact that
I think
they
I
each had a
loved
different
everything
movement.
you guys hated about it.
Yeah.
Like just how weird it was.
Yeah,
It was
and how
beyond.
surreal.
Well, I
The
loved
movements
the
were
weirdness, but the
ridiculous.
movements were so over the top stupid that when they did them, I cringed every time.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe
Yeah.
I would.
I thought it was
maybe
beautiful.
I was going to get used to this, and maybe there was going to be some beauty to it, something that I could tie to.
They could
And
have made those movements so much
what's
better.
weird is, as I was watching the movements, before I knew the ending, okay, that this was potentially something she all made up, I felt like that element in its own right was some stupid thing she just made up. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, she's making the idiots out of these people to carry the story along.
That's so funny.
With this weird movement crap. And I'm like, and then we're going to find out the real truth that there's something she actually is capable of. I was thinking there was some underlying power that this girl actually had. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we were leading up to. And the movements were just a way to bind them together through the weirdness of it, to get them to work together, if that makes sense. And so
Sure.
it stumped me all the way until we got to, find out all the movements.
I completely disagree. I thought the movements were beautiful right from the beginning. I loved how strange and surreal they were. I think if you do anything else there, it just looks like dancing or choreography or.
And, well, that's what it felt like to me.
It felt
dance.
to me. Well, it felt to me like maybe.
Are you thinking like the movements have to be ridiculous because then anybody could accidentally do the movements?
Partially, but they feel like there's something not from our world. Like they feel
They
like
do.
something.
They are so
like
weird that they would have to be.
Yeah, I loved that stuff.
And the
the noises and the
yes.
popping. Oh, so and I get why it could turn some people off, and I get why it turned you guys off. But for me, it may have been my favorite part of the show, like the movements. That may have been the sole
That's funny.
thing.
It's my least favorite part.
It may have been the sole thing that I found so moving.
And
the first time
he's the one who loves the show.
I do.
He's the one that
and
loves
that part
the
drove
show.
me crazy, and I love the show. But here's the thing: is I analyze this for a lot. I saw the final episode. Missy passed out, so I saw the final episode. I literally woke her up. I'm like, "You've got to. I know you're tired, but you have to watch the ending of this, so we can talk about it later." The show I loved because of various things that it makes me think about. I love the fact that the show actually left me analyzing both aspects of what this could have been or what it is. Does that make sense? Both sides of whether this was real or whether it wasn't. And it left so many ways of analyzing certain things that happened during the show. Like, for example, are we to the... Maybe we should finish getting
give me just a second to get through
to the cafeteria.
Yeah, give me just a second to get through the rest of the story.
Because we have to talk about the second group.
So the movements, to finish out kind of those, her and the football player do the first two movements together to save the life of the drug addict. He reveals the third movement. He's all in now. He was totally out. He was like, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. And now he's seen it and he knows his movement.
Right,
so
because he was dead and now he's not.
So he adds the third movement. They get there's a guitar player girl add the fourth movement.
Yes.
I thought it was the singer that had the fourth.
No, the singer couldn't do a movement. Why couldn't she do a movement?
I don't know.
Maybe she just wasn't.
Her singing wasn't pitch perfect.
Because it wasn't pitch perfect. She almost felt like there was an abstract character.
Well, she gave a reason at one point. I feel like she gave a reason why she wasn't getting a movement, or because I remember they were like, "Oh, yeah, you're not the fourth movement," and then they bring in the guitar player for the fourth movement, and then there's this mystical fifth movement that they're looking for, and it becomes a race. It becomes a race between them and this crazy sociopathic scientist to figure out that fifth movement. Yeah. He's studying all these dance moves with them, trying to figure out how to open up this portal to the other side.
Because once they figure out the fifth movement, he'll figure out the fifth movement.
Right, exactly. And so
now they're trying to mask things because they know they don't want him to be able to reach the other side before they do.
So the fifth movement ends up coming when and I loved this scene, when the local police officer, he leaves the door unlocked and he comes in and sees what's going on. So he pulls the gun on our crazy scientist, and we find out he has a wife that's dealing with ALS. And the crazy scientist is like, look, I know you'd do anything to bring your wife back. These kids can do it. I've seen them bring people back to life. We're kind of left wondering, okay, is the cop going to buy this or is he not? And he actually does buy it, brings his wife in.
But I knew he was going to because unfortunately, they foreshadowed so heavily the idea that his wife was, dying and suffering, and it was breaking him down as a person.
Right, yeah.
So I knew the instant that he discovered that was the argument that he was going to do. When the cop came in, I had it in my mind that one of two things was going to happen. Either he was going to startle him because he was listening to the whale music, I think, at the time. He was going to startle him, and the guy was going to spin around with the gun that he had, and he was going to shoot him. Okay? Or he was going to say, whoa, hold on. It's not what it looks like. I can fix this. I can help your wife. I knew one of those two things was going to happen. And when they did, I was like, I called it.
So he brings his wife back, and the football player and Prairie are in a room with her, and they start to cure her ALS, and just enough so that she is able to tell Prairie the fifth movement. That
was a powerful scene.
Which thankfully is a very small movement that, you can learn very quickly.
Yeah.
And that was actually her role. She was told when she had her near-death experience a while back in life that someday angels would need to know, what this movement was. So now they've got the fifth movement. They've all got the fifth movement. They're trying to figure it out. And Somebody go from there, because I don't exactly remember. I know he
Okay,
shot
so
both the cop and the wife.
Yeah, so after that, he realized he didn't need Prairie anymore.
Correct.
So he put her in the car after he drugged her.
But he didn't need her anymore, but he realizes that she's a threat because she's the one that unified them all in the first place.
Yeah.
So
Right.
he has to take her out of the equation because the others were easily manipulated and dealt with by him when she wasn't there.
Yeah.
But instead of killing her, he just drops her off.
That's weird.
He
Yeah,
sticks her in a
that's
car
why-
and drops her off. But here's the deal. I understood that if you put it in correlation with everything else that happened with Prairie when she got there. This woman has attempted to drug him, and she ended up putting him in anaphylactic shock. He was well aware of what happened at that point and how it happened. Okay.
Well, he got sick for a completely different reason than her drugging him.
I understand, but he knew once when the scene came about that he had her go get the epinephrine, and she contemplated not doing it. He was aware at that point that she was trying to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was the knocking him down the stairs, escape. So he was well aware that she was a threat, but he didn't at any of these points, and these were before he knew about the movements. He didn't take retribution on her. He saw something, and that's why I said this guy was so committed to his cause. He saw something beautiful in these people and what they came back with, And the only reason that the one died was on accident. The drug user, remember, it was in his anger, he was freaking out, and then he lost track of what
He
the guy was
accidentally
going through. And
poked his ears too deeply or something.
Yeah.
and popped his
Ugh.
eardrums, and that was brutal. So I honestly
Would
think
that
that the
kill
reason
you, though? Just popping your eardrums? Maybe he stuck it all the way into his brain. Maybe that was...
I don't know if I popped your eardrums while your head was immersed in water.
No, I think you just go deaf.
Yeah, I think you just go deaf.
I don't know. I was going to say I have no idea.
Yeah, I think there had to be some brain damage there or something.
So when he dumps her off, I see this as part of he's angry with her, because she's kind of messed with things, but he feels pity towards her, and she was, you know what I mean? She was one of the special ones for him. And so it was just I don't need you, but I'm going to dump you and take off because there's no way you're going to be able to explain. And he made that very clear in previous conversations, like, who are you going to tell? Like, you know what I mean? Where are we? Where does this exist? What's the place like? How do you get to us?
And it was the drug dealer that turned on them, right? That gave away that she had got it, because he didn't know she had her sight back, and the drug dealer gave that away at one point, trying to
or the druggie, the
druggie.
addict.
Sorry, not dealer. Yeah.
It was the addict. As a way of potentially not having to go through it again.
Yeah.
He sold every one of them out.
Yeah, that's right.
And so at this point, he drops her off and takes off, and now she has to find her way home. And I believe she hitchhikes with a guy. Or do we ever see how she gets back?
Well,
Okay, so she jumps off the bridge in the beginning of the show. But
do you
why?
understand that? Do you understand that? Because she wanted to die to find them. She wanted to die to go to the other side to get to them.
But did she get out of a car?
We have no idea how she got on the bridge.
Yeah, I think it did show her getting out of a car, didn't it? Maybe she was hitchhiking or
She
something.
got out of a car and then just ran over to
So
I don't
that's
know
what
that
she
it's
must have
explicit,
hitchhiked,
but-
and that's her explanation to the police. And then we end up in the position where we are now, where she is back home. She's some kind of wunderkind, media starlet.
Right.
But she doesn't care about any of that because she needs to get 5 people together to do the movements so she can get to the other side. 4 people together, including her, plus her, so they can do the movements so she can get to the other side and save these ones that she left behind. And so that's her mission. And so we gather this ragtag group of people together who are all in some way dysfunctional. We have the teacher who's lost her way. The rebel.
You've got the bully, rebel, delinquent.
Yes.
You've got
the
in some of
Asian
these characters. Some of these characters were underdeveloped, but
yes, the Asian
girl who wanted to be a boy.
Correct.
And you've got what was the deal with the other kid?
So
I can see him in my brain, but what was his?
So the Hispanic kid?
No. The Hispanic kid I got because he had good grades. He was like had a scholarship. Like I got
lacrosse
his story.
Player.
Yeah, I got his story. But then there was another.
Oh, it was the friend of the Asian kid.
Yeah, and I don't know. We knew anything about that kid.
Was he heavyset? Maybe
that's season 2. Maybe a little bit. Yeah.
So yeah, he was just. So here's what didn't make sense to me. This was another element of the show that I didn't buy, and this is why the show's so cool. I loved it so much, even though there were some things that stuck out.
I said, there's
this
love and hate it
weird
kind of stuff here.
community they lived in, which was apparently it was a tract of super high end homes they had started building, but the developer had run out of money. So there's a bunch of these like really amazing, like $650,000 houses.
Yeah.
There's a number of them that aren't fully finished. But then the subdivision, or if you want to call it the cul-de-sac, because that's where they were, had a number of them that were, and all the neighbors knew each other fairly well. So he was the only one who didn't come from one of these like wealthy families. When they showed him going home, it was to some dumpy house with a sister who was a pothead.
Yeah.
And she lived in the house too. And I don't have any idea how they were paying their bills because it was a huge house.
Yeah.
It was just the two of them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And it looked like just a crappy pot den. Everything was covered in junk.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's like, he told her that he liked the girl. And she's like, why don't you talk to her? So it was like,
he didn't have much.
Yeah, he didn't have much, but it was random because his house didn't fit in with everything else. Everyone else lived in that little area, except for the teacher. So he was just some abstract, but he was good friends with the Asian girl.
Yeah.
So, it was.
I think it was a boy, actually. I think because they were
she was trying to be a boy.
Yeah, she was
the
taking
Asian girl
testosterone.
wanted
She was
to-
taking
yeah, she was taking testosterone.
and yeah.
So we've got this ragtag group, and they're all
Or
suffering.
he was taking testosterone. Gender identity is
It go either way. But all of them have their cross to bear. They're all in a very awkward situation in their lives. And
I thought that the Asian boy / girl, whatever, I'll just say boy, was the most underdeveloped out of all of them.
Yeah, she was. Because you didn't get to see a glimpse into
I
too much of
disagree.
her family.
I think the one we're talking about is the most underdeveloped. Who went
The
back to
pothead
they had the
kid.
pothead sister.
Yeah, that's true.
What else?
Because
What
we
do
don't
we
know
really
anything
know
else
about him?
We know nothing about his life other than he lives in a dump.
But both of them were underdeveloped. I really believe that. And even the kid that was the lacrosse player didn't feel extremely developed.
No, we got way more from the teacher and the delinquent than we did anyone else.
And the teacher and the delinquent brought up what I thought was a really interesting part of the show, which was this delinquent was not just like a redeemed delinquent. He was never really redeemed. Like, he was a jerk. He was awful to the people around him. He was a horrible person.
Yeah, it was a drug
by
dealer.
anybody's definition.
Yeah.
And the show takes great pains to say, yet he's still a human being.
Yes.
And has value as a human being. And I found that to be, you talk about themes, and we can get to a central theme kind of that I saw through here. That was the central theme for me, was the idea of the unity of humanity coming together to
redeem even some of the deplorable people.
Yeah, exactly. So anyhow, to say that, I mentioned that because the teacher is a big part of that.
Yes.
Initially she wants him to get sent away, and this is always kind of hanging over his head to be sent away to this camp or whatever. And she is talked into.
She was the one championing the process and going to evict it, make sure they got expelled from school and everything else.
And then Prairie talks to her, and all of a sudden, she's
with this
able
amazing, and that's one of my favorite scenes in the whole show, because Prairie exhibits this otherworldly level of understanding of people and reading them.
Yeah.
And it feeds into maybe there's something more to this woman than we know.
Yeah.
And because she's amazingly insightful. And I mean, that scene rocked me. I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, she just cut into that woman like nothing you've ever seen and then just left it.
So here's where it goes. They are all listening to her tell her story. Then they are all learning these moves because they want to help her get back. They all buy in. They believe this. Whether we do or not, they believe.
Very slowly. And they all have their doubts. They finally all come to an agreement.
And then they're caught. They're figured out. They're told they can't meet together. The kid is, he's tried to send off to this school, but the teacher saves him in some interesting ways.
By giving up her inheritance check.
Yeah, her inheritance. So their lives start to, intertwine a little bit with some of these things.
Outside of things. And we're just kind of coming to the place where we think, okay, now we're going to figure out, did this really happen or didn't it? Prairie's talking to a psychiatrist who seems to say some things about her iron content and different things that we can...
Okay.
That there's some science behind.
I'm going to jump ahead here. Why was he breaking into the house in the last episode too?
Hold on. We're going to get to
Season 2.
So, So Prairie at this point's locked up, okay? And he is searching for answers because he wants to make all this... He realizes they have to do something.
Yeah.
So he goes to Prairie's house to look for clues. Now, here's the deal. Where this all goes wonky is he breaks into her house and he goes searching.
When you say he, you're talking about...
the lacrosse player.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he breaks into Prairie's house, okay, at night. Her parents are apparently not home now.
No, remember, they're staying at the hotel.
Oh, that's right. They're at the hotel. And they've got Prairie. This guy breaks in and he finds under her bed a box okay, with the Iliad and all these books that explain every aspect of the story, a study of the Russian czars. So all these books, when put together, explain each element of the story.
Where she was getting the information if she was making it up.
So to fabricate this story. And now he's completely disillusioned. But as he comes downstairs, randomly in the middle of the night, he's met by the FBI agent that Prairie has been telling her story to. And I thought, why in the hell is he in the house?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking
and why specifically at that moment when that kid was there? You know, it's like, what are you doing here? And then he hugs the kid and tells him that maybe that's because that's you solved. Oh, because he asked him, you know, it's all just crap. And he tells him, you know, you were who she needed when she needed you. And so now we're like, okay, is there more to this? And then we get to Prairie comes home and they're all at school. Okay. And it's another day. They're all disillusioned by this, you know.
And she's talked about another dream she's had about, you know, high ceilings.
Correct. But hasn't finished out. We don't know what it is yet.
Right.
And now all of a sudden the teacher just packing her stuff because she's got to go for her inappropriate, interaction with the kids. And fast forward to cut it short. We now have these visions of someone walking down a hill. And the cafeteria is packed with all these people, and it turns out to be a school shooter. Mm-hmm. And so as this guy works his way towards...
haunting.
It was terrifying. The scene was absolutely gripping. And as he comes into the cafeteria, everyone is now huddled underneath the tables, and he's walking through very slowly. And I love the fact that they never identify him. I love the fact that they just leave it as a faceless evil, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this group of them looks at each other and
they all
like,
happen to be in there in different places in the cafeteria.
Different places in the cafeteria, and they look at each other, and there's this moment where they all look at each other like, it's now or never, we can fix this.
Yeah.
And so they get up and they all start doing the ridiculous, over-the-top, weird body movements.
Ruin the whole show.
Oh,
when they do, the shooter stops, okay? And they're doing the movements and everything else, and all of a sudden he's tackled by a cafeteria worker, okay? And beat down. And then we're left, he fires off one round, okay? Well, it was just a burst as he gets tackled, and then we see Prairie standing outside, camera pans away, we realize a bullet went through the window and hit her, and she's, in an angelic pose, of course, very...
Yeah, she was doing the movements with them because she ran...
from outside, because she realized that's what her purpose was.
Yeah.
And so then we see her loaded in an ambulance, and of course, everyone chases after her, and we're left with this thing, was this real or not? And was she telling the truth, and was the books were the books found just coincidental? So here's the deal. At the end of the show, when the shooter, were they actually stopped by the spirit of whatever these guys are doing? Did they actually alter the timeline, okay, or stop it? Or did they just distract him enough?
Right, exactly.
That the cafeteria worker tackled him, and by being so ridiculously weird, did they throw him off enough going...
What is going on? What are these people doing?
That he gets tackled and stopped from actually harming anyone. And so there's so many elements of this that you're like, wait a second. But if you look back, I can make a very good argument either way as to whether it was just total crap and she just, man, is she good at sewing a yarn, okay? Or was this legit, okay? And now we are prepped for Prairie to get repaired, and then to delve into season 2 where we go find these other characters.
Or is it somewhere in between where this is her interpretation of what actually happened to her, but she was actually something like this?
And they allude to that. That something happened, because no matter what, whether you believe her story or not,
something happened
to her, and we just don't know at this point what it was.
Yeah,
and the only person who could know is her.
See, here's the thing: if season 2 ever comes out, if her story was fake, they're going to have to do a whole nother origin story on her. And I don't want to hear it.
You're so mad now. You're turned off. You're pissed.
No, not mad. It's just like, it's exhausting to have to go, because that's what a season 1 of a show is supposed to be. It's supposed to lay the groundwork and to move forward. So if her whole story was fake, they're going to have to relay groundwork for her, how she got her sight back and everything. And I don't want to have to go through that again. So I want the story to be true just so the story can progress and actually get good.
I think it's...
I'm not saying that I'll watch season 2, but...
I think it's somewhere in between. I think that's kind of the only way to continue with this, is that the unreliable narrator, which we've seen a lot of recently in pop culture, Mr. Robot being the primary example.
The truth isn't always what it seems.
Yeah, exactly. So what she's told us, I don't believe is completely true, but I believe there are elements to it. I believe the show will always play with, is the supernatural stuff real or not? The show gives us an opportunity to believe both ways. I think we'll find out in season 2 that the drug addict coming back to life isn't exactly what we thought it was, because that's a supernatural element that can't be. If that's true,
right,
that's obviously supernatural. I think so. Yeah. That will be changed in some way. There'll be some other elements that might change. I think the threads that we're left hanging with are the counselor from the FBI obviously knows more
Love
than
his
he
character.
said. I do too, and I think he'll be a big part of season 2. And then, you know, did Prairie, is she coming back to life, or you know?
I think she did at the last thing she did is she woke up in the hospital bed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so she isn't alive.
Oh, that's right.
So
because she's like Homer, and then it ends.
Yeah.
Can we get super spoilery?
Sure.
It is spoiler cast.
So this show, it had me torn so bad. Okay. Not mad, but peeved and intrigued at the same time. Like, so I looked it up, and I looked up the writers of the show and everything about it, because this show, talk about creating internet craziness. Okay. Mm-hmm. There's forums galore on whether or not, you know, this is true or not. So the writers said they had absolutely no idea if there was any way they'd have a shot at getting a second season. So they wrote this in a specific way in this ending so that they could have an opportunity for it just to be left as a mystery.
Yeah.
Okay. Or to give them an easy way with material to start for a second season.
Yeah. And
they refused to say one way or another. They said they know what the answer to things is in their mind, you know, but it is intended to be mysterious, and they wrote it because they weren't sure that they were going to get a second season. So they needed to leave some mystery to it without closing off too many things. You know what I mean? So it didn't feel unfinished.
Yeah.
And it felt more mysterious.
I found it fascinating. Part of me worries that the second season, because so much was wrapped up with that group of 5, I felt like it was such a complete telling of their story. You know, as far as what those 5 were together to accomplish, that I wonder if season 2 brings together a different group of misfits.
I hope not.
And what they're... Well, you're not going to watch season 2 anyway, Andrew.
Yes.
Why do you care?
Yeah,
that's
Mr.
true.
OA
I'll see you guys later. I'm going to head out.
I didn't like the teacher at first. By the time the show concluded, I actually liked each of the characters for their individual place and things, and I loved what they represented for the story.
Yeah.
And I would really like to see those original 5 come back and be a part of season 2.
I don't know. I feel like their story's done.
You think so?
I think so. I mean, I guess I don't know. At that point, it becomes more. I don't know. I'm really digging anthologies. I really like the idea of telling a new story in seasons, you know, of a show.
That's what I love about American Horror Story. I love how they do
those
that.
kind of things.
Yep.
Black Mirror or something like that.
I love
you know,
Black Mirror.
So I guess I'd like to see them go somewhere different. You can keep Prairie. You know, she can kind of be the center. She is the OA. She's the original Angel, and we can keep learning more about her story. But I think she needs to tell the new parts to a different group, and I don't know what it would look like, but I'm intrigued enough to pay attention. Unlike some people in this room, Andrew.
I like. What do you want from me? I like good shows.
I like good shows. I think we can surmise ultimately that Andrew is not a fan of the OA.
I think that's been fair from the beginning.
There was so much potential for me anyway. That the show is going to be so
it's
good.
Okay, because I feel the same way about Lost.
This is what happens. This is what happens, I think, when Netflix continues to throw boatloads of money to people and say, "Hey, just do your vision.
Yeah,
do your vision."
Yes.
And sometimes it's going to hit you right. Sometimes it's not going to hit you at all.
Sometimes you'll get a Stranger Things. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you'll get an OA.
Speaking of which, since we're talking Netflix and shows, one we haven't talked about, and I would love to, if you decide to talk about it. Have you guys watched Longmire?
No.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So good. It's an incredibly good show.
Yeah. But I mean, seriously, they're just handing out cash to these creators to do shows. I mean,
and you know what?
We didn't talk about Baz Luhrmann's show on Netflix that he did, the Get Down.
Oh,
you know?
God, is it so good?
So I mean, it's just incredible to. I think it's definitely a new era, and their model is so interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they have to pull back.
When we first saw that Netflix was going to do original programming, I was really skeptical that a streaming service was going to be able to make compelling content.
But then they came out with House of Cards.
But and then they came out with House of Cards. But this is something funny because we, as a company, Chris and I, we've been big proponents of cutting the cord. I hate cable companies. I hate the money that they steal from consumers and the way they force them into packages and the way they manipulate our federal government, with lobbyists and everything else. And I could go on for days. So I'm a big proponent of cutting the cord. I feel like there's so many mediums to obtain entertainment without subscribing to cable packages and things like that people should check them out. But it was a hard sell for a lot of people because of, people who are dedicated sports fans, okay? Because there weren't avenues or venues for them. And that's changed a lot in the last 2 years with things like PlayStation View that offers every sports channel that you could possibly want from any of the others.
Sling's got some stuff.
So, but Netflix, I'm not joking. We cut the cord 3 years ago, Missy and I did, and we've used the internet as our primary source of entertainment since. We got so wrapped up. There are so many good shows on Netflix to watch.
You almost don't need anything else.
Like, unless you have just nothing but time on your hands, like you have no job, you literally could live off of just Netflix's original programming and have amazing television, much better than any network show, And it's amazing how much they've provided in fantastic and great original content. Longmire, Bloodlines, House of Cards, the OA, Stranger Things. I mean, the list just goes on and on. I think we counted like 27 good shows in 2016 that are just Netflix originals, and that's not even all of them. The ones that we watched and loved and fell in love with, Orange is the New Black, and they're prepping 600 hours of original content, 600 hours for 2017 in original shows.
Wow.
Just for Netflix.
Black Mirror is Netflix now, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, so good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Well,
now
Andrew,
I
it's
just
okay.
infomercialed.
Andrew, don't feel bad. It's okay. You don't have to like everything.
Here's my analogy for the show, and it'll be the last thing I say. For me, OA was a group of creators who thought that they were pulling off a great magical illusion, but for me, it came off like a quirky birthday magician.
There you go.
Wow, that's a great analogy.
Yep. If they thought they were Penn and Teller.
Yeah.
But they were just a birthday
magician. Just a really
magician.
bad clown magician. Bad clown magician. Bad clown magician.